Good evening, Scraft fans. I have got another game for you here from R2.5 or whatever it is we're calling it. I don't even know. This game is between Biggels and EliTheSeli, or yeah, indeed. Anyway, it's Benji and it's Ellis. So Biggels here as the Terran player. Actually, we don't need the. Oh my goodness, what have I done? We don't really need the name bar up there, do we? When we've got this WCS overlay. So, Biggels in the bottom right of Disco Bloodbath, and Ellis up in the top left. You can see the production tab worryingly empty at present for Biggels. So, what is it that he is up to? Two SCVs moving out onto the map can generally only mean one thing. It means a proxy. Standard form for a Terran, to be honest, and it can be very effective. What he does need a supply depot though, and there's no supply depot in production at present. So I don't know about this, you know. Oh, there we go. The supply depot just dropped at the top of the ramp there. So hopefully. I say hopefully. What you normally see with this type of build, you send two SCVs across the map, you drop two barracks somewhere outside your opponent's base, ideally not on a line that one of their workers would stumble upon if they just click it across the map to scout. So, you know, popular locations, you could build one here and here, so that a worker that comes out to scout will essentially take the shortest route. It'll come down the ramp here and it'll come down here and probably won't see those. This one is quite close to, you know, there is a chance that a worker could see that. Biggels decides to do a little bit of scouting as his own, does see that there is barracks at the top of the ramp and everything is perfectly normal. You know, money-wise, Biggels has got enough to be starting the second barracks, so I don't know what this worker's doing. I really want the second barracks to start. One barracks, you know, a proxy with one barracks isn't really going to get you very far. The purpose of this proxy is that your units don't have to walk across the map, and because you go straight into two racks production, you're able to overwhelm your opponent with only a single racks. Well, guess what? Ellis has got a racks as well, so you're not going to have a number advantage, and he'll have the high ground advantage. So you could be in trouble here, and actually it's Ellis with the Marine out first. This Marine could well come down and chase the SCV, in which case he's going to see that it is a proxy, and he absolutely does see that it's a proxy. So Ellis lifts, doesn't actually bother to run away with these SCVs. Now it's going to be a Marine fight here. It kind of depends on who got the first shot off. So Biggels does manage to win that. What's normal to see is you pull the SCV to help in that fight as well. Ellis drops the reactor, and that isn't a crazy idea at all. You know, it's going to take a while for this to finish up, but once it does finish up, he'll be able to double Marine production. What would be honestly standard fare if you've seen this would be just to build a bunker. Although, to be fair, his Marine did get the whole way down here, so he does see that it's only a single barracks. If I'd have seen that, because it just doesn't make sense for there to be a single barracks, I think I'd have dropped a bunker. But here we have Biggels has 3 Marines, and there is currently no Marines out for Ellis. He is, however, going to be able to build them 2 at a time, and Benji can only build Marines 1 at a time. So ultimately, obviously that first one hadn't been weakened from before, is going to die pretty quickly without the high ground vision. These guys are shooting the wrong Marine, but it just doesn't matter. This proxy is over. This SCV did nothing to help whatsoever. So as a Terran, if you are going to proxy, send 2 SCVs, build 2 racks. As soon as the first racks is finished up, get your SCV to start building a bunker so that you can pop up and down the ramp, and if you're chased down the ramp, you can pull back to the bunker. Ideally, what you'd like to do is have the bunker just out of normal Marine range. Bunkers increase the range of Marines. So if it's just out of normal Marine range, you can pull you can pull your Marines into it, send something up the ramp to give you vision, and it will outrange the stuff that's at the top of the ramp. As you can see, Ellis now has a fairly substantial Marine advantage. So, you know, Marines trickling in 1 at a time. Biggels is also building them at home here. He's got the eBay, but I don't see any upgrades actually in the production tab at present. So it looks like Ellis holds this pretty comfortably. You know, now with the 2 racks, both with reactors here, he can actually build Marines 4 at a time, and that is definitely going to see this off. I'd like to see him just move down the ramp and clean this up, to be honest. You know, just YOLO, but there's nothing there to stop you. Um, yeah, so the factory with the tech lab, once the tech lab finishes up, he'll be able to build things like siege tanks. And if this wasn't over before, it will be when the siege tanks come out. These guys do need to shoot the Marines. You know, once there's a siege tank on the high ground here, this is more than over. But in fact, it's unnecessary. So I'd also like to see some expanding going on from both the players, to be honest. Biggles still actually hasn't saturated the men, so he needs to be building workers. You know, he's got the money for an expo, so oh, good. There is the expo coming down for Biggles. So yeah, at this point, if you're Biggles, you say, well, you know, okay, that didn't work, so back to plan B. Let's expand, let's start teching up, but importantly, let's make sure we're safe from the counter-attack, because quite often if you push early and it doesn't work, it does mean that the person that you've pushed into has got an advantage, an army advantage, and we can see that that is the case here. So yeah, a pretty substantial army advantage, and you've got to be careful. It's a pretty common thing to push, you know, maybe feel like it almost worked but didn't quite, and then you die to the counter-attack, because you've you haven't had tech upgrades, you haven't been expanding because you've been focused on that push. So when the push fails, you turn your attention to your economy, you turn your attention to your tech, which means you're not building units. If your opponent does nothing but just build units, they can come across the map and hit you pretty hard. Both players actually supply block there at present, 47 of 47, 31 of 31, so a little bit sloppy not keeping an eye on that tab up in the top right to check their own supply. But both with depots in production, so that will quickly resolve. I do notice Biggles does not have an orbital command. Alice does have the orbital command, but isn't actually dropping any mules at present. And you know, that is kind of why you build an orbital command in the early game. Yes, scans are incredibly useful, and the game that we saw with Matt versus Luke sort of confirms just how useful they are. They help you see cloaked units. In addition to that, you can scout. It's an unblockable scout. You can just drop a scan in the middle of your opponent's base or wherever you think their tech is going to be hidden, and you can see everything there is to see. So Biggles with the bunker now actually does look pretty well defended. If this siege tank was better positioned and sieged up, it would be a very nasty ramp to push up into. These workers aren't going anywhere. Do remember, folks, that your original sort of base automatically rallies workers to the minerals. Any subsequent base that you build, you have to set that rally point by right clicking on the minerals to get those workers to go there as soon as they're built. So EliTheSeli, also with the bunker at the top of the ramp, does have a couple of siege tanks and a reasonable number of Marines here. What I'm not seeing is anything like upgrades, in fact, from either of the players. Now, with that said, he has just swapped the factory and the barracks so that the tech lab is now on the barracks, and obviously the first thing I'd like to see is combat shield there, because it just makes such a big difference to the longevity of your Marines. Yeah, but it looks like both of these players are kind of setting up for a fairly defensive posture. We've got missile turret coming down, we've got siege tanks. I don't know about sieging up there, that's pretty dubious. You know, siege tanks have got a phenomenal range. Look at the range that these things have all the way out there. So you want them at the back. You want them hard to get at. You know, if the siege tanks are right at the front, I stim my Marines and I just run straight up and focus those down, and the tanks will only get one volley off each. If the siege tanks are at the back, you know, stimming into them is suicide, because A, you need to be fully up the ramp before you have sight of them. B, you're walking into not only the siege tank fire, but just machine gun fire from this turret and all the other units, etc. So their range is so massive, you don't need to put them on the front line. You can have them a little way back out of the way of sort of Marine fire and stuff. So, oh, look at the timing on that. So EliTheSeli moves out with this force onto the map just before Biggles drops the scan. So, you know, he didn't quite catch that setup moving out onto this map, doesn't quite know what's happening. I really like the sending 2 Marines in front. I don't know if that was something he thought of intentionally and did, or if it's just it happened to come out that way. If you are moving out onto the map, it's a great thing to do. The last thing you want to do is, you move your units out, you glance away for a second, you're looking at your base, you're doing some macro and you're doing whatever. The last thing you want is for your stuff to just walk into a trap. You don't want your entire Marine ball to walk into a couple of Widow Mines, a couple of siege tanks blind. So you have a couple of expendable units just out the front to see things. So he is going to go for this. He isn't shooting just yet, and now does stop and shoot. Needs to focus on these siege tanks sharpish. They are the dealers of splash damage, and he has taken a bit of a beating there. So still has a couple of units left, but this bunker standing strong. Did, however, clean up all of the siege tanks. Yeah. As I said previously, it's not a very pleasant ramp to try and push up into when there are a couple of siege tanks sieged up. Of course, those Marines with no upgrades, no combat shield, just makes the tanks are basically 2-shot in them, and that is nasty. With the combat shield, they're much more able to take those shots to the face. And obviously, if you have stim, it means you can stim in, you get to those tanks, get within range of them much quicker, so it's one less shot you've got to take, and of course you focus them down much quicker. So I'm not sure where that scan was. There is Biggles just checking, I guess, whether or not his opponent has taken this base yet. Which he hasn't. Neither of these players really stretching out in terms of economy. Both of them are still on 2 bases, which at the 10-minute mark is pretty unusual. Biggles without even the natural saturated. But this is the EMS Novice League, and that's not too big a deal. He's got money in the bank, does need to get his gas to catch up. EliTheSeli has not only a large amount of money in the bank, but also a large amount of gas. So, if you are playing the game, do keep an eye on that. Keep it glancing up at the corner. If you find you've got a huge surplus of stuff, well then create more production facilities. Build 2 more factories, build 4 more barracks, so that you can just build units faster. Because otherwise, once you're on 2-3 bases, if you've only got 2 barracks and 1 factory, you just cannot make stuff as quickly as you can mine the minerals. You just can't keep up with your income. So it is important to be aware of that, continue to increase the number of production facilities that you've got when you're playing Terran, or indeed Protoss. As Zerg, you need to keep increasing the number of hatcheries that you've got to have the same effect, essentially. So things appear to have settled down for a moment anyway. What's going on here? Yeah, neither player looking like they want to get out on the map and do anything particularly active. So Biggles doing a reasonable job of increasing his production. Does have these 3 factories now. That is, I can only describe that location as bizarre. I have no idea why you'd build a factory there. It just looks weird. It looks like something the AI would do. The AI ends up with buildings just like, oh, build a factory here. Yeah. So it's beginning to tech up, but neither of these players with any upgrades whatsoever. Oh no, I'll tell a lie. Look, when did that happen? EliTheSeli does indeed have combat shield, and now +1 for Biggles. So I don't even know what I'm talking about. Just ignore me. Yeah, Biggles has got the armory, so these 3 factories, these 2 with tech labs, would sort of suggest that he is going to go for a very mech heavy build. He's got like a lot of Hellions in the queue. It's a little bit late game for Hellions, so unless you're going to be going sort of Hellbats with maybe medevac support to fight these Marines, it's a slightly unusual choice, I would suggest. Hellbats you tend to see a lot of against Zerg to clean up Zerglings and the likes. Let's see what happens here. Let's see if this attack is any more successful. It's unfortunate that it's fragmented because these Hellions are very much faster than everything else, and as a result they turn up on their own with no assistance. There is something huge missing from this army from EliTheSeli, and that is medevacs. There's no medevacs here. So this is a better way around. Look, the siege tank at the back and the units in front of it, it's the way around you want things. This siege tank can still dish out damage from the back. I love it. I love the warp in with the battle cruisers. These battle cruisers should be able to do a fantastic job of cleaning up here. I know they're taking a lot of fire, but my goodness, these things are tough. They just have so many hit points. A battle cruiser with 400 or something hit points, should be able to focus on this turret. And yes, this one is beginning to get a little bit low, but you know, these battle cruisers can just work away here for a long time. He could really do with cleaning up this, he could really do with cleaning up the Banshee there, because it was just killing his units. So, you know, battle cruisers can shoot while they're moving, so typically what you want to do once you're in this position is just casually float backward and forward over the mineral line and just mop up all that stuff. This Thor will help out a great deal against the battle cruisers. It's going to do serious amounts of damage, and these guys need to get out of there, otherwise they are going to drop. So that the first one goes down, and the second one is taking a lot of damage. EliTheSeli looks like he's just going to let it die, which is a real shame, because at present it's focusing his CC, and it's just not going to get it. He would have been much better off focusing down workers, because he pretty much could have emptied this mineral line, and that would have been fine. In general, if you're going to play a BC battlecruiser sort of game, the idea is that you keep them alive. They can take a lot of hits to the face. So what you want to do in the early game is, if you've got them out fast, you blink them across the map using their sort of teleport ability, and you blink them into your opponent's base. You shoot as many workers as you can, and you just fly off, and then, you know, fly home around the edge of the map or whatever. And after that, once it's later in the game and your opponent's likely to have enough damage output to take down a battlecruiser reasonably quickly, like for example now Biggels has several Thors, so you need the ability to escape fast. So what you would tend to do then is fly the battlecruisers around the edge of the map into your opponent's base, get your damage done, and once they start to take damage, you don't even try and fight the Thors, you know, just damage the infrastructure, damage tech buildings so that your opponent can't build high-tech stuff, shoot workers. That's what you're aiming to achieve. And just before your battle cruisers are completely wrecked, then you blink them out of there using the teleport ability. You send them home and you get your SCVs to repair them. And it's a very cost-efficient way of fighting, because they can dole out and they can absorb a huge amount of damage. And then if you're just repairing them back up, it's not really costing you anywhere near as much as it's costing your opponent. That is very much the idea. So there are still no medevacs here for EliTheSeli. There is combat shield, but unfortunately there's no stim. So it's hard to see this army winning, to be honest. If we look at the army supply, it is relatively even, I know, but you know, look, these are Thors and siege tanks and stuff, and with the Banshees in the air as well, this stuff's just going to get its ass handed to it by these much higher tier units. So, you know, even though the supply was relatively even, ultimately the army value was much in favour of Biggels. Right, so what is this we see? There's another battlecruiser coming across the map. What's this little blip here? There's a Viking just parked over here. I don't really know why. Yeah, so Ella's going to try and get something done with the battlecruiser. Notice that the minerals are lower than they used to be for Biggels, and I imagine that's because he's beginning to mine out. He's mined out in the men here. Looks like this battlecruiser is coming in to have a look. It didn't teleport here, so it can teleport away, and he needs to do that right now. He does not want to lose this. Thors have got a phenomenal range. Oh, that is a shame. But ultimately, that did not get much done. The mistake there was you know, the frontal attack. You want to fly that in over here and wreck stuff. The other thing you want to do really is, from the fusion core, which you need in order to build battlecruisers, you want to get the upgrade that allows your battlecruisers to use the Yamato cannon. That's like a single burst, takes a long time to recharge, but does a furious amount of damage in a single hit. If you've got a few battlecruisers, you can use that cannon to focus down buildings, so you can just turn up and fire several Yamato cannons into a building, and then it just takes a few shots to tip that over the edge and make it dead. Or you can use it to focus down these heavier hitting units like the Thors, etc. You can just charge up that Yamato and batter away at a Thor, and a couple of Yamatos will make a Thor look significantly less intimidating. So you can see there Biggels isn't doing a bad job of getting some upgrades now. Has got the +1 air, has got the +1 ground. and +1 for the bio as well. So a reasonable amount of attack upgrades, and that is +1 armor coming as well. For the mech stuff, for the air and the mech. So yeah, not doing too badly in Ellis land. He has got his third base up quicker than his opponent, so his income is going to continue to be quite good. These 4 battle cruisers can be really problematic. Unsupported, you don't want to send them in to just a frontal fight. But with support, their damage output would be high. What Ellis needs to do, when he's pushing here, he needs to be a little bit more organised about it. It is very hard to break a defensive position in general. Defender's advantage is real. Siege tanks that are sieged up and stuff are difficult. So really, what he needs to do is bring his own siege tanks with him, decide where he's going to siege those up so that they're in range. So you run them in and you siege them as the rest of your stuff moves forward, so that you've got that support from your own siege tanks. The battle cruisers, I mean, if they have the support of this other stuff, they can certainly help out a great deal. But I would much prefer to see them just sneak in round the back and doing damage. Now it looks like this stuff is just outnumbered here, and the Thors of course do splash damage in the air, and the way these battle cruisers are bunched together, they are actually going to go down pretty quickly before they can really get an awful lot done. So Ellis not trading very efficiently here at all, but with that superior income he can kind of get away with it. Again, the main criticism there, you need more medevacs, you need upgrades, and of course these siege tanks were all staying at home. You've got 5 siege tanks there that could have made quite a big difference to that fight if they were sieged up. So I kind of feel to an extent Ellis is sort of beating his head against the wall, running into this over and over again, and needs to sort of rethink that strat a little bit. Meanwhile, Biggels is pushing out some Vikings, and that's not a crazy plan at all. If you think you're going to get harassed by these battle cruisers, Vikings can do a pretty good job of pushing them away. They have got a pretty amazing range in the air, Vikings, so very useful against the battle cruisers. There are loads of SCVs sitting about doing nothing. This base is beginning to mine out as well, and at present there's just no sign of Biggels expanding, so presumably he's hoping to win the game in the next sort of 2 minutes, because otherwise I don't know what he's going to do. This base is going to run out of minerals. He's already run out of minerals in the main. Given that the gases are gone as well, he could even lift this command center and just fly it into this position and transfer the workers and secure his income. Ellis, still is producing just off these few structures. I really want to see him just build more structures. I mean, you've got quite a lot of minerals, you've got quite a lot of gas, so it won't do you any harm to get cranking and just have more. You've got enough money to be building battle cruisers, 2-3 at a time. We've got the armory that will enable Thors and stuff, and as you can see there's 3 Thors actually queued up instead of just start one Thor building and then build another factory, so that it would actually be quicker when the factory would be finished and stuff, and you could start the other Thor. I don't know why. I think he's accidentally shooting his own stuff there or something, is he? But yeah, he's got the armory, and that will also allow upgrades for his air and mech units, and I'd really love to see those upgrades happening. So, smart servos, I think, is being researched by Biggels. This is better. Link those in and get some hurt done. And actually, these SCVs were idle, but look at the minerals for Biggels. Very little. So these, I think he's decided to focus down this starport here. And, well, I don't know about that. I think I'd be happy to maybe just pick off the workers. Maybe I'd pick off the CC as well and really stymie my opponent's opportunity to continue having an income. Biggels doesn't really seem to be responding to this. All of his stuff is just parked over here. So I don't know about this. I think, you could clean this up. You've got more than enough stuff to do it. But he's decided, I think, instead to go for a base trade. Looks like he's just going to march across the map, fly this CC out of there, and see what happens. And yeah, it's not a crazy plan. He's still got a reasonable amount of money back up now to spend, so I'd like to see some stuff in production. You've got these 3 factories, build some things that can help with this, even Widow Mines, Thors, whatever. This is a formidable army though. The army supplies look pretty even, but yeah, this will focus on that command center very, very quickly indeed. So EliTheSeli needs to be careful how he engages this. That battlecruiser wasn't even shooting until it arrives. These siege tanks are not sieged up, and that is fairly painful. If they were, they'd be doling out splash damage all over this. But at present they're not, and look at all this stuff that is idle. The key to a successful engagement is that all your stuff is shooting at once. If you drip feed it in, the bigger army, if you drip feed it in, there's power in numbers. The bigger army trades more efficiently. So sending in a fraction of your army at a time against a whole army just means that you lose all your stuff. So slightly disappointing. If we go back to this, I'll just pause that for a second if I can. Where's the pause? He definitely could have won that fight. Defender's advantage. If the siege tanks are sieged up in these positions, if the Marines have come forward to deal with this flying stuff, then that's a very, very different fight indeed. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, there's only 2 BCs here. They will take a really long time to kill all this stuff. But had he won that fight, the next step is then march across the map. So it looked like a one-sided battle in the end, and really it shouldn't have been. We did check the army supplies; they were remarkably even. Even right now, if you look at the army supplies, Ellis has actually quit out of a game in which he still has an army advantage, which is unusual, isn't it? So yeah, I'm kind of curious. All of this stuff is pretty bruised. The Vikings are still in the air, but bear in mind they have to land to shoot stuff, and they're pretty poor when they do land. He's got enough Marines here to see off this battlecruiser. This siege tank is now sieged up. These 2 siege tanks could siege up, and with the Thor and the Marines, he actually could have cleaned that up even as it was. So yeah, I'm not sure if he needed to quit there. Anyway, he did. GG. Biggels takes the first game.